coalition of businesses, cities, and regional governments working to accelerate progress there.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Thank you very much and welcome to Japan Climate Action Summit. And I am one of the principal advocates, and I'd like to make a few opening remarks. Today, in combating the global warming, this is going to be a historical day. In order to realize the goals of the Paris Agreement, non-state actors in Japan have come together. In order to realize the goals of the Paris Agreement, we have called upon some partners and colleagues to work on that, and that was in May this year, before the summer. Before we started this action, and if we could get as many as 50 participants, that would be a great success. But on the July the 6th, when we had the press release, there were 105 participants, and here, and 257 were participating groups and organizations are here with us. Thank you very much indeed. 257 might seem to be a small number. For example, the JCCU, and they do have 29 million consumers as the members, and also the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, they do have more than 80. And so 20 municipalities and 36 million people live in those municipalities, which account for 1/3 of the total population. Literally speaking, we are having the participants from across the nation. This is really a historical success, and we are very much encouraged, and we would like to really be having the courage and to really pay respect to all these participants who have intended to come together. And SDGs in 2015 and the Paris Agreement, and that was really the turning point. And non-state actors in the world will have come together, and then they have entered into the new age. And at the top of the works COP21, and non-state actors have really pushed the movement. And we mean business, and they are very active, and they had been very successful in the activities. And as we have seen the emergence of the age and era of the non-state actors, and in November last year, and COP23, it was the turning point. And President Trump was stated that they are going to withdraw from that, and the non-state actors in the U.S. really formed the America's Pledge. Was formed, and we are still in. And they are really having the remarkable activities which I cannot really forget. And in order to really see the trend developed in the society, and non-state actors in Japan need to have some kind of organization and alliance. And last month in San Francisco, Global Climate Action Summit, GCAS, was held. And more than 4,000 non-state actors got together, and that was really an active a summit. And JCI and America's Pledge had signed the MOU to further promote the cooperation between the two companies. And through JCAS, what I felt strongly was as follows. JCI was born in Japan, and that was really good. And we were not really left behind this worldwide trend, and I was relieved. And it is all thanks to your support and cooperation. Having said that, we cannot be complacent. And all these were natural disasters which hit the western part of Japan this summer. The climate change is really imminent crisis, and the IPCC and report, and one special report on 1.5 degrees released just this week. And then we definitely need to limit this temperature rise to 1.5 degrees. And also we need to really realize the zero-emission society. In the last 20 years, the world losses, it was $3 trillion, and then it was really a huge amount, which was reported in Nikkei paper this morning, and it has really increased by 2.2 times before that 1 decade. And so non-state actors, we were who are supposed to deliver on the goals of the Paris Agreement, the real test comes. And also, JCI is no exception to that. And from long time ago, and also we have this the benefits of the earth, and then that would benefit the people. And so the harmony of the people working together would be the most important element, and then that would strengthen the JCI. And in the world, climate change is everyone's business. That's what they are saying. And the climate change really matters to all the people, and this is relevant to everybody. So why don't we just have hands in hand and to really make the path toward delivery of the goals of the Paris Agreement, and also to really have this JCI being a stronger initiative for our children and grandchildren and the future generation. Thank you very much. And today we have the pleasure of having two overseas keynote speakers, and one speaker is from San Francisco, and Mr. Carl Pope, and he needs no introduction. And the Sierra Club, at the Sierra Club, he has worked for more than 30 years, and he was the former chairman, and also America's Pledge that I have referred to earlier, and the America's Pledge badge is worn on my chest today, and he is serving as the vice chair, and the co-chair is Michael Bloomberg, Jeffrey Brown, and the governor of the state of California.
Paul, I want to invite you to the podium. The floor is yours.
Arigato.
Thank you.
I'm honored and privileged to address this summit and celebrate the partnership between the Japanese Climate Initiative and America's Pledge. I would also like to thank Japan Renewable Energy Institute for their work in helping to support this event. Michael Bloomberg and I would both like to express our appreciation as well to the cities, businesses, and civic organizations that have joined together to create the Japan Climate Initiative. Its creation is particularly important this week. I would also like to thank those who've made it possible for Mike Bloomberg's and my book, Climate of Hope, to appear in Japanese. I'm particularly grateful to our distinguished translator, Hiroko Kuniya-san. She has done a remarkable job of helping our ideas reach the Japanese public in their own language. And finally, I am pleased to be able to present some comments and welcoming remarks from Michael Bloomberg, co-chair of America's Pledge, co-author of Climate of Hope, and well-known as the head of Bloomberg LP and the former mayor of New York. A message from Michael Bloomberg.
Thanks for coming to the launch of the Japanese edition of Climate of Hope. We wrote this book to inspire people to act, and to act in their own communities. Instead of focusing on national governments, it focuses on cities, businesses, and citizens. Instead of pessimism, it offers practical ways to make progress now. Instead of concentrating on far-off risks, it concentrates on the immediate benefits of action now. People tend to think about climate change as a single problem, but it's really a series of smaller problems that we must take on individually. Each problem has a solution, and better still, each solution can make our societies healthier and our economies stronger. Japan has embraced that commitment to climate action. By embracing innovations in energy and technology, Japan has become one of the most energy-efficient countries in the world. Japanese cities are taking action at the local level through international networks like the Global Covenant of Mayors. And more than 100 companies, local government agencies, and nonprofits have launched the Japan Climate Initiative, a bottom-up effort to drive climate action across Japan. If we continue to take these type of actions, I'm optimistic about our future. I hope you'll enjoy the book, and thanks again for coming.
This week, 1,100 kilometers to the west in Incheon, Korea, the world's climate scientists delivered an urgent message. We must decarbonize our economy fast, far faster than we are doing, faster than the world's nations pledged in Paris, and faster than any previous energy transformation. Such speed must come from societies, not just governments, from cities and villages, not just ministries, from business and banks, not just politicians. It must well up from the bottom, as well as being clearly defined from the top. Decarbonization requires change, mostly little, some big, in everything. How we light our offices, grow our food, visit our friends, cool our refrigerators, power our televisions, and even entertain our children. We are entering a new world. Helping create a broad movement for social decarbonization is the mission of the Japan Climate Initiative. Just as in the United States, it is the mission of America's Pledge, the sister organization to JCI, which Mike Bloomberg and Jerry Brown created, and of which I serve as the vice chair. I am astonished to report that 5 of Japan's top 10 firms, its Chamber of Commerce and Industry, the Consumer Co-Operative Union, and 24 local governments representing 30% of Japan's population have joined the Japan Climate Initiative in only a few months. I believe this is the fastest mobilization on behalf of the climate in history, and speed is what we need. I applaud the Japanese Climate Initiative. At this moment, the world needs Japan's leadership. We must remember Japan's historic role on climate. Japan has led, Japan has innovated, Japan created unity, Japan drew on its traditions, but it always looked forward. Japan led. It pioneered the decarbonization of a modern economy in the 1970s. It hosted and convened the Kyoto Conference that created the first global climate agreement. Japan innovated. It broke new ground during the oil crisis, and again after the tragedy of Fukushima. Indeed, Japan gave the world the concept of Kaizen, gradual, continual innovation, which lies at the stunning progress we have made in lowering the cost of low-carbon technologies. Indeed, the road to a low-carbon future should be labeled "Made in Japan." Look at the technologies that we need to use. Lithium-ion batteries, LED lights, innovative solar panels, the hybrid and fuel cell automobiles, all have been forged in Japanese workshops. Japan forged unity. It understood that speed requires harmony and community. The world envies Japan's ability to create consensus. And at this moment, we need that very badly. Many people on this trip have asked me, what's happening in your country? I am afraid that, as so often in a crisis, my government has frozen up and is firmly looking backwards. Sadly, the US government has done that before on climate. We had solar panels on our White House rooftop in the 1980s. We took them down, and we left the task of taking wind and solar forward to other countries like Japan. After helping forge the Kyoto Protocol, the United States refused to ratify it. And now, only a few years after we joined the world at Paris, my government has turned its back on science and is facing the past. Fortunately, while the US government is abandoning its Paris commitments, American society has refused to go backwards. We have prepared a report showing that the United States has already accomplished half of its Paris pledge. Cities, states, and companies have adopted policies that will take us 2/3 of the way there, and they have made plans to take us the rest of the way to the full redemption of our Paris pledge. Our administration may be looking backward. America is looking forward. But we need a partnership with Japan. Both our countries are suffering extreme weather. The US unprecedented rainfall and never before experienced wildfires. Japan, new flooding, damaging droughts, dangerous heat waves. To avoid even more such damaging effects, the climate scientists have told us that we must first and foremost phase out our use of coal. Here, the United States is leading. A powerful campaign funded by Mike Bloomberg and led by the organization I used to run, the Sierra Club, has already retired more than half of America's coal-fired power fleet. At our present rates, we will be completely free of coal in the United States by 2035. And this major success story has brought down the price of electricity by 25%. Countries like India, Morocco, Chile, and Mexico are also benefiting from the cheapest electricity the world has ever known, electricity flowing from wind turbines and solar panels. But this cheap power only comes to countries that invest heavily in renewables and create competitive markets. The two biggest markets of the 21st century, India and China, have both solidly committed their futures to moving beyond fossil fuels. The grids of the future in Beijing and Delhi will not be powered by coal, and their streets will not be polluted by internal combustion engines. The cars and trucks of the future will be electrified. And these trends are what gives us hope that we can indeed meet the task the climate scientists have set. Rapid decarbonization will strengthen our economy faster. Rapid transformation. What can Japan offer the world on that topic? Japan is no stranger to successful, seemingly impossible transformations. Consider what happened in the Meiji era. Consider the recovery after World War II. Japan accomplished the seemingly impossible. The world needs its leadership to do so again. We need Japan's unique strength to lead, to innovate, to unite, and to draw upon tradition. Using these skills, Japan can help the world overcome the climate crisis in time. Just in time, I fear, to borrow another Japanese concept. It is the mission of the Japan Climate Alliance, and it is the purpose of this summit to support Japanese society in confronting and helping to overcome the world's greatest global challenge, climate. We wish you luck in your endeavors. We need your help. Thank you very much. Arigato gozaimasu.
For your inspiring presentation. I do believe that the relationship between JCI and your America's Pledge will become one of the most important relationships in the world. And I want to bring back my best regard to Mr. Bloomberg for his, kind and encouraging message. Thank you. 続きまして、ポール・ディッキンソンさんをご紹介。
Next, I would like to introduce Mr. Paul Dickinson.
彼は日本に何回も来て、
He's been to Japan several times, many times. Many of you might be familiar with this. He's with the CDP. Companies, financial institutions are exchanging the information on carbon. This has now become world standard. He's one of the founders. For the past 20 years or so, I had a chance to be involved in this. Initially, it started in a small office, but CDP now close to 1,000 financial institutions. Their assets close to $100 trillion. That's much higher than the global GDP. That's what they do. The 6,000, 7,000 global companies are now involved in the event. Since the foundation, he's been leading CDP. And that's my old friend, Paul.
Please to the podium.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the invitation to speak, and please let me salute the leadership of the Japan Climate Initiative. I've traveled here today because climate change is important, and Japan is very important. I first visited Japan 15 years ago, and I've always been enormously impressed by Japanese technology, design, and industrial power. Now today, Japan is nervous regarding investment in leadership in climate change and in climate change technologies. As Carl so effectively said, the world needs the industrial power of Japan. China can make low technology today, and in 10 years, China can make high technology. So the moment is now. Donald Trump may be a joke, but it's not funny. It's a serious situation. What is the particular position of Japan? Chinese industry has not yet established an effective global footprint, does not yet have global trust. The big Japanese companies have the trust of the whole world. Removing fossil fuels from the energy system requires technology where Japan is already very strong. And Japan pioneered what I call sustainability marketing. This is the display from a Toyota Prius car. I believe it is the greatest innovation in automobile marketing that I have ever seen. Like many people, I've gone into a Toyota Prius car and the driver has pointed to this display and explained how clever the car is. They have sold me the car, and that's clever. Hollywood movie stars began to buy Toyota Prius cars. This is how you can achieve market-leading position. The Prius was the top 3 selling car in the whole world at one point. The world is expecting Japan to lead on energy storage. Bloomberg New Energy Finance predict this. And academic commentators have observed Japanese companies have a strong record of innovation. Climate change requires decarbonization. It's a technological challenge in many, many different areas. I recently went to a conference on replacing meat in diets. There are billions and billions of dollars going into new companies with plant-based food solutions. Carl spoke of the history of Japan's success, and part of that has been the ability of great ministries like METI to be able to see the future. And as we look into the future, we need again that vision. We need to consider global system conditions. And we need Japan to develop leadership in what I call inevitable technologies. Inevitable technologies. Why are they inevitable? I'm sorry to say, the climate change movement is raising consciousness through extreme weather events. They are having a big impact. Extreme weather changes how people will spend their money. Tomorrow, consumers worldwide will vote with their money for low-carbon products and services. This is key. This is not an opinion. These are the difficult facts. We have extreme weather. It is changing people's minds. And as well as energy systems, there are huge opportunities for Japan in the electronics of dematerialization. My newspaper is no longer made of paper. It comes on a screen. I want to emphasize this point of dematerialization. It is an extremely important concept in future GDP growth. And I'm going to give one big example of this today. One I find very interesting. Why do we travel so much? Why do we travel to offices? Why do we travel to meetings? I am very honored that the organizers of this conference paid for me to come here, but it is costing $524 a minute for me to stand here. Sorry. The economic opportunity is absolutely enormous. I am here for one reason. In 2018, we cannot make a good video telephone. It took many decades to make good cars, and it took many decades to make good airplanes. And it is taking decades to make a good video phone. There will be big profits for companies that solve this. Think about a device that can do what an office can achieve. An office is a primitive technology. We need devices that are always on, separate to our computers. This device is not yet invented. People may not want to work from home, but they can work in communal offices near their homes. They can walk to work. But you need some things to make it work. You need eye contact. Video conferencing does not allow us to look each other in the eye. A great Dutch businessman taught me this. How can you put a camera behind a screen? Korean companies, Samsung and LG, make transparent screens for many years. And I have seen a Korean company make a prototype video phone with a transparent screen. With a transparent screen, the camera can be behind the screen, and we can look at each other eye to eye, as we do in real life. I emphasize this point because it is amazing that we still are not using a video to communicate. When you can look out of the screen, it will be a breakthrough in technology, like the first car. That is a picture of the first car that's sold by the million. We are waiting for transport substitution technology that can be sold by the million. Also, for effective video communication, you need high bandwidth. But look, Japan already leads the world in the deployment of fiber optic networks. This is one example of many technologies where Japan is already leading the world. In so many areas, as Carl said, electric vehicles, energy efficiency, electricity storage and batteries, in industrial design and technology, in global logistics, Japan leads the world. Japan simply needs confidence to invest in a future that we now all know is inevitable. CDP is very proud to be associated with the Japan Climate Initiative because your companies and cities and your investors show the way. There are great opportunities for partnership, for planning, for industry, cities, and investors to work together, including throughout the whole supply chain. And I'm pleased that CDP provides a service to companies to support gathering information from supply chains. Please contact us if you would like to know more. But at the heart of this revolution is industry setting science-based targets for emissions reductions, recognizing the global economic opportunity and taking that opportunity. And alongside the science-based targets for industry, we need science-based policy from government to support capitalizing on the economic opportunity. It is a great privilege for CDP to be operating at such scale in Japan. And it is a great honor for myself and for other distinguished visitors, such as Carl, to be in this great country at this most exciting moment when the world truly needs the genius and leadership of Japan. Thank you for giving us all hope.
ディキンソン様、ありがとうございました。
Thank you so much,
ここからは
Mr. Dickinson. From local governments and companies, we would like to ask the people to come up to the podium to have a panel discussion. Panel discussion, Frontier of Climate Action.
最初のセッション。The first session is pursuing well below 2 degrees target by corporates. The senior manager of CDP Japan, Ms. Takase, is going to moderate the session. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is the first panel discussion. We are going to listen to the views of JCI members, which are already committed to decarbonization. According to CDP estimation, about 2/3 of CDP emissions are originating from companies. Therefore, companies have to work hard, and if that is done, decarbonization is possible. So in this session, I think we would like to demystify what you are thinking. So big companies, large emitters may not be able to reduce emissions. Energy-intensive businesses will not be able to set targets. And Scope 3 is attracting much attention, but it's too difficult to focus on Scope 3. So these are the issues we would like to delve on in this panel discussion and listen to the views of the panel. Now, first of all, let me introduce the panel. Hitachi Corporation, Mr. Yukio Araki, Sustainability Promotion, Ms. Yukiko Araki, Sustainability Promotion Division, Executive General Manager, and Mr. Mitsuaki Komoto, Energy and Climate Change, Deputy General Manager of Sumitomo Chemical. And from Asahi Group Holdings, we have Ms. Atsuko Suzuki, Senior Officer, General Manager of CSR Department. And last but not least, from Kao Corporation, we have Mr. Koichi Yanagita, Vice President of ESG. So this is the stellar members of the panel. So these are the companies representing the myth that I mentioned earlier. Maybe you think these companies are not able to achieve the target. Now, so Mr. Araki, first of all, in the case of Hitachi, Ms. Araki, it is a global conglomerate. So emissions, according to CDP, is quite large. So you are a large emitter. So Hitachi reduction target, maybe it is perhaps difficult for you to have a target, right?
Well, that was a very detailed introduction. Thank you. I'm the Araki. I'm with Hitachi. As you just said, if you look at a company, 10 trillion yen is the sales level. We do many kinds of businesses. In the past, we were kind of a comprehensive electric manufacturer. But now, the social innovation business is what we do. Mainly B2B is what we do. Looking at a business, it's so diversified. The CDP, on CO2 emissions, we contributed our data to CDP. There is a railway business, IT business. We do those things as well. But there's some overlapping with what Komoto-san is doing. We do some chemical company that's within a group. Metal manufacturer is another company we have in our group. So, about emissions, it's not just that we are big in our size. As departments and divisions, we are so diversified. In 2016, environmental long-term plan, the Hitachi Environmental Innovation 2050. Well, you are looking at this right now. This is what we made. It's a real summary, but in compiling this, we had a lot of discussions. Can we really do this? Can we really pull this off? That was one thing. But as you have already heard, it's not just about global warming, but environmental issues in general. For a company to survive, this is something we have to address. So not just bottom up, but we looked at this is what we should be, we ought to be, compared with in 2010, 2050, 80% reduction. So 2030, 50% reduction in 2030 fiscal year. At other companies, they are talking about carbon neutral or carbon zero. Some of them have such targets, so we can't just be complacent. But again, on our part, this is a pretty bold goal. Other than that, the recycle-oriented closed-cycle society, the water resources, again, the recycling, the ratio should be 50%. This is another target. I think it's related to climate change. So setting up such goals, objectives, and as a company, we are tackling these. Do I have one more minute? There's a little bit of constraint of time. So these are some of the things that we do. And in the panel discussion, I'd like to share some other things with you. About emissions, most of the emissions actually, it's not from waste and manufacturing. More than 90% comes from the utilization of products and services at the consumers. That's the reality. So how can we best reduce that? Working together with consumers, how best we can reduce emissions, that's the issue. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. 80% reduction, that is a target. I was astonished. That's a big number. So that is a lofty reduction target. That's Hitachi. Now, next, I would like to ask who? 80% reduction. So I was surprised and I am impressed. But when it comes to decarbonization, so it's not low carbon transition, it is decarbonization. That means zero carbon. So zero should be very difficult. What do you think, Ms. Suzuki? In our company too, thank you for the very kind introduction for our company too. But I don't have my panel on the screen. Could I have Asahi's slide? And Ms. Takase's quite provocative introduction, if I may say so. To respond to that, in our company, we have Asahi Carbon Zero. In April this year, we announced that strategy. And frankly speaking, in 2050, Asahi Group Holdings and related companies, they will eliminate CO2 emissions, therefore zero carbon. That is the target we set. And people think that we can never achieve zero, but we never know until you try. That's wonderful. So what that means is we have 4 members on the panel, and perhaps there is a line that I can draw here between Hitachi, Sumitomo on one hand, and also Asahi and Kao. I think the amount is different between these companies. When it comes to the utilization of products, it's very difficult to reduce emissions in the stage of product utilization. In the manufacturing stage and also material procurement, the majority of CO2 emission comes from those stages. And therefore, we are operating a business in that way, therefore very difficult to reduce emissions further. However, in a sense, if you think about it, fundamental innovation is needed to solve this problem. Otherwise, we will never be able to achieve decarbonization. That is a strong request coming from the top management. 10 years ago, decarbonization, not decarbonization, we set a low carbon target 10 years ago. However, that was an annual reduction target in terms of percentage toward 2020. However, we change it to total emission target, that is to say carbon zero to be achieved in 2050. That is a new target we set. So as you said, yes, we had a very heated debate in the management. I hope that my management team is not here in this hall, but in the management meeting and also board meeting, we had a heated debate actually. There are 2 things they said. One is, in the business management that we are doing, eliminating CO2 emissions, there is no one in the management and no business leaders who are opposed to emissions eliminations. However, we have to understand how much cost is there and how much risks are involved. To what extent could we accurately calculate that? In what way could we explain to our shareholders and investors? So that was the major debate we had. So we have 3 targets. By 2030, in the initial stage, 30% reduction, scope 1 and 2. So that is the first target. Furthermore, in scope 3, that is one of the monitoring targets, 30% reduction in scope 3. These are commitments. This is the first stage of our activities. And secondly, the first thing we have to do is a thorough efforts in energy conservation in the upstream, energy saving, energy efficient equipment and plants. And thirdly, the expanded use of renewable energies. Through these three measures, we can be held accountable to shareholders and investors, and we want to make efforts toward 2050, and that journey was embarked upon in April this year. In the beginning of next year, we are going to establish a new environment vision 2050, and the main pillars of this vision will be zero emission target in climate change. So that would be the key. And we would like to cover a broad area in procurement and other areas. And we would like to announce our commitment to external audience. So please wait and look forward to that, Mr. Takase. The other day in August, you obtained SBT certification, yes. And no one like CDP and WWF could not say anything to zero target. Therefore, purely and naturally, certification was given to Asahi. Now, energy-intensive industry, which is a Sumitomo chemical industry, actually emitting a lot of emissions, right? So when it comes to chemical industry, reduction path and reduction target is difficult to come by. What is your view?
Well, we are the material industry player. And when we really manufacture materials at works and plants, we do assume, they consume a lot of the volume. And also we are asked to really produce them at a lower cost. And so inevitably, we really emit a lot of CO2. And so it is very challenging for us to reduce that. That is really true. But because of that, as the player in the material industry, we are seriously tackling at the CO2 emission reduction, and that is necessary. And on the part of the Sumitomo Chemical, as one of our policies, through our businesses, we would like to really help solve the societal issues, and that's one of the corporate philosophy. And so, vis-a-vis the global warming, we would like to really make an active contribution. That is a policy. In March this year, SBT was to be set, and we made the declaration. And since then, together with the Secretary of People, we have the interaction in concrete terms, and at last, we will be quite soon able to release that. And today, I am afraid I cannot really disclose the specific numbers, but the SBT originally is scope 1, 2, and the total volume reduction, in 2030, at least 25% reduction is required, which is a very challenging instead of the reduction. Internally in our company, whether we can do it or not, and if we start discussing that, the discussion might be endless, and we will not be able to make any decision, and only such a decision would be made by the top management only. But on our part, we would like to really have the ambitious goal set, and then to make the united efforts towards achieving that goal. That's where we are now.
More specifically, top management acknowledged the need to act, so they are motivated now, right?
Yes, in the top management level, that kind of policy has been discussed, and those of us in the Secretariat side, we are really providing lots of information as to the trend outside the company and in the world, and then what are the sort of the reactions and responses by the customers. And SBT, for example, it's not just asking whether the business can do that, but there is really essential and necessary target to be achieved. And so that will be known to our top management, and going through that process, only then our management can make a decision.
Wonderful. There is a need to achieve a 2-degree target. That is why you came up with the SBT. Next week, Sumitomo Chemical is going to make a very important announcement. Perhaps some people know what is coming out. what is due. But the large emitters, large emitting companies, there are investor actions being taken. The climate action 100 plus, which is well known, not only scope 1 and 3, scope 3 is also emphasized. So the companies are required to go into scope 3 area, and Hitachi is already engaged in that. And scope 3, reduction in scope 3, is it difficult? Would you like to say a few words? Scope 3 reduction is too difficult? Anybody?
Well, depending on the types of the businesses, scope 3 composition might be different, whether it's of the downstream companies like in case of Hitachi. Well, depending on the product will be much of the emitting cells, and those of us in the upstream, in terms of 2/3 of the scope 3 is to really related to the sort of manufacturing of the raw materials in the upstream. And a company like us, if we are to look into the scope 3, well, we have to think about what we should do in the upstream. And so through engagement, well, we would like to make efforts to minimize that to the extent possible. So depending on the company, the strategy might be different from one company to another.
Thank you. But you haven't started scope 3 efforts, all of you, right? So going forward, scope 3 will be a future challenge for you, right? So now, with regard to scope 3, almost 10 years, scope 3 engagement has been pursued by KAO. We have Mr. Yanagida from KAO. So as a leader in scope 3 area, I want to ask him to give us advice how we can go about scope 3 efforts.
No, please. We are not that kind of a veteran, Yanagita with the KAO Corporation. Great to be here. The Komoto-san from Sumitomo, just as you mentioned, the chemical parts, 20% or so are chemical business. What we do, there was the desiccation, the reactor, and also the purification. We thought that we were consuming a lot of energy. In 2006, LCA, life cycle assessment, is something that we did for the first time. To give you the results first, scope 1 and scope 2, there wasn't much in the scope 1 and scope 2. Especially at the customer's site. For instance, when someone takes a shower, that hot water the consumers use, you use a washing machine, the power that's consumed by washing machines, that was quite significant. That was the result of the analysis. More than 50% of the emissions actually come from those. Also, our suppliers or the discarding of the packages and containers, that was significant. We have chemical business, but the other parts were quite significant. So what did we think? We need to really address this. 2009, together being eco-friendly, this is the concept we came up with. With KAO alone, at the time, the scope 3 concept was just at the embryonic status. KAO alone can't really pull this off. So calling upon customers to join hands with us, that was the beginning of the concept. To be more specific, what did we do? And that was 2009. Rinse just detergent, Attack Neo, where you need to rinse just once, not twice. Potentially, by using this detergent, the surfactant, people can just rinse once. But to realize this default setting at the washing machines has to be just rinsing once. Now, appliance manufacturers now have this course with just one rinse. But at the time, it was cumbersome. You have to press this button several times in order to have just one rinsing. It was stressful on the part of customers. At the time, in TV commercials, we gave explanation about the mechanism and calling upon the end users to work with us. Also, we opened a museum, corporate museum, and we did these experiments so that customers can actually experience them. So with this kind of detergent, you need to rinse only once. We gave that experience also together with the distributors and the local governments. We worked together. So 50% is actually technology, but the rest, 50% is the communication. That's what I remember from 2009. Of course, we value technology, so I want to say that technology is 50%, but in terms of the communication, perhaps that was even more important than the technology part.
Yes, I was wondering, only one rinse is enough back then, and it was very clear. So cooperation with the suppliers.
The CDP supply chain project, I think that was we started in 2009. Initially, it was about getting the information. We started with 50 companies. Last year, we had information from 250 companies from which we received the information, collected information. Initially, oh, Kao, what do you want to do? That's the kind of a response, the reaction. But nowadays, I think many companies have been cooperating with us.
Thank you. So, as you just heard, Hitachi, Sumitomo Chemical, Asahi Holdings, and Kao, all these companies are working so hard to reduce emissions. I hope you understand that. And therefore, in this way, top management have to be involved, and there could be some opposition from within. However, a bold decision has been made by these companies. So discussion and bold decisions and setting a target like this, through such activities, what was good about it, and what good changes have that brought about? First, Ms. Suzuki. And naturally, top management took a decision. Therefore, it wasn't very difficult once decision was made. But how can I say? We have to eliminate the carbon. We have to achieve zero. And each and every one of our employees started to understand what we need to do. And in my company, we are now in the process of putting together a new midterm business plan, which will be starting next year. So operating companies and other functions, if we look at their activities and employees in those functions, we understand they feel they have to do something on their part. So there is a sense of ownership, in other words. And I think this top management decision came down to more concrete actions on the ground. So target for 2030 and 2050, it's quite a distant from now. Therefore, we don't have very strict commitment for every year. So we are going to trace and monitor the progress every 3 years or so, so still loose. So our PDCA, or trace and monitoring awareness, but I think each function has an even greater awareness and consciousness, and they are becoming more serious and thinking about what they need to do on the ground. Therefore, bold decision has been made and commitment was made, and that was fully communicated within the company, and the decision has cascaded down to employees. So no hesitation whether our target is achieved. That should be eliminated. So make a decision and turn it to actual action. So commitment. Not only rise up. We have to be committed. Now, Komoto-san, was there any change after this process?
In our case, we are above to really change, and I think that's where we are now. Having an ambitious target, and what becomes very clear is that if we keep doing the things in the way we are doing, we will never achieve the target. And the existing method and the way of doing will never get us to achieve the target. And so we have to really resort to the wisdom and also all the people working in the plants, and having all the involvement of the people there. And conversely put, we are really was setting a very ambitious target, and we are not really sure whether we will be able to achieve that. And then because of that, ambitious target, we would be really working very hard, and then that's where we are. And so we would be really struggling to really make the efforts.
Innovation in English.
Yeah, innovation. Well, it's easier to say than said. Well, it is easier to say that. And then if we are really use it as this sort of joker card to really solve everything, well, that will not really be the case. And so we are to really accumulate a small step of innovation and to really come closer to the target. And so it depends on each individual employee's efforts. And in the universe of SDGs, participation is a very important, and we are focusing on that. So we would like to have the engagement of everyone.
So we set the target, and I think everybody in the organization will be involved. Araki-san?
今までのお話と大体同じようなことが私の中では
Within our company, something that you have heard is actually happening. At our company, to begin with, there is a 3-year plan, a rolling 3-year plan on environment, steadily about energy conservation at plants. There is a history that we have been doing this. But if you look at the climate action targets, you are looking at 2030, 2050, sometimes 2100. It's well into the future what we have to do, looking at the distant future. So coming up with such a long-term objective was something that we have done for the first time. Normally in business, you just look at 3 years ahead. Even if it's long, a target, just look at 10 years ahead. So the gap was significant. CO2 reduction is a target, of course. But as I said earlier, if we look at the CO2 emissions, they happen at the consumer sites. When they use our products and services, there is emission. So together with customers, how best we can actually lower the CO2 emissions at the site of consumers. So we need to come up with proposals. We call this a social innovation business, but what does that mean? We were actually wondering that. In environment, we are coming up with those proposals. And we want the customers to choose us. We want customers to listen to our proposals. In a way, all the employees, somebody said that you really are convinced in doing something. So we have to connect that to businesses. And that, I think, was a major transformational change.
Thank you very much. In other words, so not only saying something positive, and you find these targets as a seeds for new business, and also you encourage suppliers and customers to come on board. And Yanagida-san, in this case, suppliers and customers, is there any change you see on the part of suppliers and customers?
I said this a little, but in the supply chain project, and there are many more people who are joining in this project. So we've been analyzing how it has been changing, concerning setting the targets, managing them, and also the commitment from the top, as was indicated before. With those things, the atmosphere has changed, especially in the past 2 years. There have been rapid changes. We could feel that. Perhaps it's not just these undertakings, CCFD, and there are many others. So I think this kind of movement will accelerate further. Now, about consumers. I think movement, or the pace is rather slow. As Hitachi mentions that the emissions take place at products, the usage. I think there are several keywords already mentioned, but another point is what happens at the consumer side. For them to really be convinced, giving them some time so that they can listen to explanation, or really giving them experience, something like an experiment. Otherwise, it's very difficult. if it's just a very short period of time, did you give it some kind of a very short pitch? I think that's another point in these activities.
Thank you. On the part of suppliers, you are seeing changes, as you said. And CAO's suppliers came to us because the company wants to get the SDB certification. And it is a CAO's supplier, so I am trying to help the company, and they are working so hard so that they can get SDB certification. So in this way, companies are committed. Companies are encouraging others to come on board. So taking action like this can lead to changes, transformation. So that is what all these companies experiencing. So I think the time has come. So just one last word before we conclude, your message to the audience. Please start. Mr. Yanagida first.
Thank you for giving me the floor first. More recently, let's see, I'm paying attention to the changes in the younger people. It's not that I always observe from the certain fixed points. I've been following the high school, the textbooks, the middle school textbooks, not just the global warming, fair trade, SDGs, human rights issues. Such words actually listened to by the children. This may sound a bit bad, but the decision makers are from households. They buy things. So these children, after 10 years, 20 years, whether they actually purchase or not, they will be the decision makers in buying our products. So we value them. To give you a little bit of lofty sounding remark, they will make the future. Children will make the future. We want them to have such mindset to pass good judgments.
Thank you, Ms. Suzuki. The company name is Asahi Holdings Group, and people wonder what we are producing. I should have said this in the beginning, but Asahi Brewery, Asahi Food, Asahi Beverages, therefore, we are producing our products from natural ingredients. Therefore, climate change measures are very important. For us, it is a survival of business. In order for our business to survive into the future, climate change has to be overcome. So that is why employees are working together with the top management to address and fight climate change, global warming. Listening to other panel, and in what way, how can we communicate our endeavor to consumers? So we have to come up with a good communication strategy too. Thank you very much. Thank you. Komoto-san.
So below 2 degrees, and that should be really well realized by society. In order to really well achieve that, there are two facts that we have to recognize. For one, that will not really welcome on the extension of the existing society. Unless we have the major transformation, we will never get there. And one single company really cannot really address that. And this is such a huge, really, issue. And so the companies and businesses or organization with an intention to really resolve that need to get together. And the Japan Climate Action Climate Change Initiative, JCI, members need to be united and to really work hard for that. That is necessary.
Araki-san, I'm getting a little bit nervous because this is my last round. We are global in activities. And it's also true for climate change. There are no borders, no borders. The government sees the borders, and they do their own bit. They have to work in their own territories. But transcending borders, in a truly global manner, we have to address this issue, as was mentioned already. Otherwise, companies won't be able to survive. I think that's the level of the problems that we see. So one company alone really can't address this, especially on our part. We have to work with our customers Of course, we come up with proposals, but from customers or even non-customers, but the stakeholders, related people's organizations, we would like to be open to those proposals, how best we can reduce CO2. If you look at the climate change issue, it's really about the quality of the people's living, and also it's about human rights. Ultimately, the people in the world over how best they can really live happy lives. As a company, what can we do? This is something that we would like to address, and JCI's activities. It's something that when one company alone can't do this, we can work together with others, together with non-Japanese players as well. So much expectations.
Thank you very much. That time has come, unfortunately. Thank you very much. The panel, please give a big round of applause to our panelists. 2015 COP21 was held and Paris Agreement was reached, and then it was only within 1 year that became effective, and 15 years after Kyoto Protocol, so the expansion of renewable energy is expected.
Well, the use of the renewable energy just for the developed countries will be really supplied and procured in a stable manner, and that is will really be spread among the developing countries as well. And vis-a-vis the turning point of the energy, all these different companies are really taking on, and all these world-leading companies who are not the traditional energy companies are really becoming new actors, and they have declared to really use the 100% renewable energy. And so in this session, all these Japanese companies who are taking a challenge to achieve 100% renewable energy will be here with us as the panelists for the next round of panel discussion. And let me introduce the panelists. Kenichi Ishida, a Managing Officer and Chief Manager of Environment Improving Department, Sekisui House Limited. And Mr. Sergio Kato, the Corporate Vice President, Rico Company Limited, General Manager of Sustainability Management Division. And Mr. Hideyuki Kanemitsu, VP, Head of the Responsible Business Unit, Fujitsu Limited. Ms. Kaori Miyake, Executive Officer, CSR and Communication, Eon Company Limited. Thank you very much for joining us. And first of all, what kind of challenges you are faced with? And that is the very first topic I'd like to cover. Ms. Miyake of Eon Company Limited, and among 1% of the total nation's consumption is really consumed by your company. And you are really going to really achieve 100% renewable energy, meaning that we are going to see 1% increase in the use of renewable energy. And I hope that you will tell us how you have come to this decision and also how you're going to achieve that.
Thank you for the kind introduction. I am Miyake. I'm with Eon. In our company, in spring of this year, 2050, long-term decarbonization vision for 2050, CO2 emission zero, that is a target we set. And as a midterm goal, by 2030, 35% compared to the 2010 level. So that is the target we announced. Now, from 2030 to 2050, so we have to drastically reduce our CO2 emissions to decarbonize. Frankly speaking, concrete, you said, I have to be specific and concrete, but as was introduced just now, we are a retail company, we are a retailer, so the CO2 emissions, in our case, derived from electricity utilization. So we have stores of various sizes, but 20,000 locations or even more. We have every day we are increasing the stores. Therefore, we have only two efforts: reduce the energy use, and also energy should be converted into renewable energy. So I don't have to talk about distant future beyond 2030. So that is our plan now. So I want to focus on shorter future, 35% reduction toward 2030. But we have to have dedicate the effort with the group companies to set up more concrete targets to achieve this. So as a total emission volume, it is very difficult based on this total number, because in our group company, we are getting bigger and bigger with a larger number of companies and stores. So it is growing day by day. So in coming 10 years from 2008 to 2018, and the number of group companies have increased by 100, and also the number of stores also increased. Therefore, we cannot make a very minute and refined calculation. Therefore, we only focus on midterm of the next 3 or so years. So we have to have a rolling plan and to put together the tracking record of individual companies to come up with a total volume. So after 2030, we have to consider sometime in the future.
Thank you. Particularly in case of Eon, the general consumers, and I really use Hatagaya Eon from time to time. And so you do have the direct touch points with the consumers in your outlets. And Asahi and Kao, you do have a lot of these sort of the business partners, and you have declared 100%. And BJP were consumers, and some appeal, and also they were internal sort of transaction wise. Are there any changes?
Well, in terms of environment, Eon Group has quite good support from customers over many years. We have support from consumers over many years. We are confident about that. We take pride in that. Therefore, not too big a change in terms of the customers' appreciation of our activities because of our target, because we have been enjoying quite good support through what we call Smart Eon since 5 or 6 years ago. Every year, we are introducing leading edge technology in terms of energy conservation. We are changing our stores into more energy efficient layout. Compared to 10 years ago, in the case of big shopping mall, 40% reduction has been achieved compared to 2010. So we lay a lot of solar panels in these Smart Eon stores. But in any case, going forward too, in this regard, customers are saying that Eon has to continue such an effort.
So people are thinking, well, Eon would do that, and then that is the reason why we are using your stores. And Ishida-san, next, and Sekisui House Limited, and what can you really introduce what you are really doing? And also, I'm going to come back to ask you again.
In Sekisui House, RE100, this is what you are asking, right? Regarding RE100 target, 50% reduction in 2030 and 100% for 2040. So unlike other companies, in our case, we have our target, other targets, I mean. In other words, we want to solve social issues through housing. That is our target. Already, solar photovoltaic solar panels have been already laid on the customers' homes, more than 700 houses. Actually, for home use, it takes only 10 years. And from next year, FIT, feed-in tariff system, will be finished. Therefore, customers are quite worried. What are we going to do with the solar panels after FIT is over? So Sekisui House is going to acquire these solar panels so that we can use them for other businesses. So we can dispel the customer's anxiety, and also we can make efficient use of existing solar panels for our business. And the volume of solar panels is like this. We have 120 gigawatt per year. That is electricity consumption, not big every year. In terms of solar power generation, we only need 120 megawatt. Therefore, it is a surplus electricity. So maybe a half of it, therefore 240 megawatt is enough. So what we have already installed, that is 20 or 30% of surplus energy from the installed capacity in order to achieve RE100. So it is not so challenging in our view. So this is maybe a different situation from other companies.
So I have a question. So those the houses that you're really selling and then you're promoting zero emission and also that will be equipped with the solar cells. But in terms of value chains and construction materials, are you really going to really well cover that within your scope?
That is where we see difficulty. Decarbonization for 2050, that target was already announced in 2008, and maybe we are ahead of other companies in doing so. In achieve this target, maybe 2020 life cycle CO2 was surveyed in 2010. That biggest difficulty lies in supply chain, how we are going to procure raw materials, because houses have a big supporting industry. In the case of Apple, the RE100 target is required. For example, kitchen, we have to ask what is CO2 emissions for this kitchen, and because we have 600,000 parts or materials to make one house, therefore we have a expensive supporting industry. Therefore, we have to wait for a while. And also, SDG procurement is going to be launched, so we would like to purchase eco-friendly things for our business.
Thank you. And next, I'd like to ask questions to Mr. Kanemitsu and the goals and initiatives of Fujitsu Limited. And internally, we're working on 100% renewable energy. What is the driving force for that? Well, in the very first place, the target of our company, that's something I'd like to start talking about. And in our company, in July this year, RE100, and we have participated as a gold member. And the target is 40% reduction in 2040 and 100% in 2050. And so that is the sort of the target we have set out. In order to achieve that, how are we going to really achieve that? And ICT companies in Western countries is the same. And then we have the semiconductor manufacturing plants and also data centers, which consumes a lot of electricity power. So it's not so easy to really replace them with the solar power. And so we would be focusing on the energy-saving type of equipment and to really perform our corporate responsibility, and then to really focus on the quality and to really make a shift to PPA and on-site. And if we can do that, PPA on on-site, it's not the case. And next week, I am going to visit India and to really introduce more of the renewable energy. And on-site, for example, if you have to service it and the prices and also the conditions and so what kind of regulation is there, we have already studied that. And so based upon that, we are really going to really present the optimum plan fit to that specific site. And so that is how we are really going to do that, starting from the overseas sites. Why from overseas? Because we're centering around the Western countries and there are different service and menus, and so we are really going to take advantage of that. 2050, are we really going to really achieve that? And that's the question or the point raised by Eon, and it is very challenging. But my personal observation is as such. Well, it's not the technology, but it is all the matters of adaptation, terms and conditions, and market rules. And so eventually there may be the possibility of seeing a big change. And so, personally, I think we will be able to achieve that. And internally, what are the changes we are seeing? And I talked with Kato-san earlier, and by making this clear declaration, the people in the company it will have the firm resolve to work on that. And so that is sort of the importance of making the declaration. And also before RE100, we have announced our vision, and the impact was not so large there. But the key takeaways and lessons learned from that is, from other companies and Western countries, and Fujitsu is very positive to renewable energy. And so we have to really be clear about that and really have the communication to external parties. From the communication perspective, I hope the other companies will look into the possibility of making a declaration. Thank you for that. And Mr. Sergio Kato and JCI, the at the launch of JCI, well, you are one of the first initial founders, and particularly with respect to RA100, and you were the very first company in Japan to really adopt that, and it's more than 1 year, and then there are other 11 companies following that. Or after RICO, there are other 11 companies follow suit. And so it's been about, within a matter of 1 year, there are 11 companies. And so as I recall it, we conducted the revision, the conference in March. And then we had this other discussion as to the introduction of this world of 100% renewable energy. And that could be very challenging, but then it would be just about 7%, which could be achievable. That was the point raised. But you were the very first to make a declaration. And how you are really going to embark upon this challenge to achieve that. And also internally, you were really you have decided to be the very first. And so how did you really convince your seniors or your subordinates? And can you tell us about that process?
Thank you. Sergio from RICO. Well, first of all, 2015, that year, as Sueyoshi-san mentioned before, the Paris Accord was concluded. Even before the Kyoto Protocol, environment-minded management is something that we did. When you look at environmental preservation, you might think, oh, so much cost, it might actually inhibit economic activities, and there's not so much return. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, that was the kind of discussion we had. But at our company, at the time, we had strong feelings about this. In the top session, our company president will have an opportunity to address you. But we had this particular passion, energy, environment preservation, creation of profits. Let's do this together. So environment-minded management, we should do this in our management. That's what we advocated, and we practiced this in the past 20-odd years. We are still immature, we know, but in various walks of what we do, we are addressing environment issues. And then profits and other economic benefits have been generated. Low carbon, creating a low carbon society. We have been saying this. In 2015, there was Paris Agreement. And our activities have been actually acknowledged. As official sponsor, we were able to be there in the Paris Agreement. The very first version of the Paris Agreement, that copy was actually printed by us. Is it okay for me to say? 2015, 3 years ago. Among the governments, there were those negotiations. People from various countries, various businesses, and people from the local governments from all over the world, NGOs and NPOs, universities, colleges, non-state actors were there, and CEOs, president, CFOs reached an agreement on decarbonization. And they were saying that to the negotiations that were taking place among the governments, because at the time in Japan there were almost no such CEOs. So what are these people thinking about? The Suzuki-san from Asahi Group mentioned management risks for future. These are future management risks. The materials will become more costly. In the insurance, the premium rate will increase and increase. There are so many risks involved. On the other hand, this transforms the society, decarbonizes the society. It's something new. This is also an opportunity. So people in the C-suite are discussing such things, and I had a chance to see that, listen to that right in front of me. So something significant is happening. So our company had to spend 2 years, not low carbon, but decarbon, complied with the Paris Accord. We are an official sponsor. We want to protect this. So decarbonization, we made that announcement. So in order to decarbonize, so without renewables, there's no way we can pursue decarbonization. Hence, we wanted to move 100% renewables. So we had this firm resolve, and now fortunately, this RE100, the global initiative was there. We jumped at it at the management committee. As I said before, we have no other choice but to do this. So there were almost no problems. There had to be a breakthrough, actually, but so we got into this, jumped into this, and lo and behold, there were no other Japanese companies. So what are we doing here? But Company A, Company G, global companies in the RE100 taught us many things. And after 1 year, well, we've been engaged in various things. And internally, RE Award, we took a liberty to establish this. There are several hundreds of sites worldwide, and there's a little bit of competition. So who will be RE100? There's a kind of a race. It's a kind of a game, but for us, yes, we had a firm resolve, but we were encouraged by the Paris Agreement.
Thank you. And COP21, and I took part in that. And on the 12th, as this on Saturday, there was this adoption of the agreement, and then at the nighttime, pavilion was dismantled, and on the other hand, plenary sessions went on, and then in the corner of the pavilion, there were some people remaining, and then the agreement was reached, and then there was this the toast made with the champagne, and I really wanted to be among them. But women business pavilion, and that was the pavilion of the women business, and that was very impressive. And the business indeed was waiting this agreement, and that I really wanted that kind of the momentum to come to Japan. And Miyake-san, as I said earlier, you do have a quite large value chain, and in the U.S., this very big supermarket chain, vis-a-vis value chain, they were really trying to really address decarbonization, and they have made a commitment, and so that's what they have already done. In case of EWA, vis-a-vis your business partners, and how are you really calling upon them?
Yes. We haven't done that yet. We haven't come to that stage yet, frankly speaking. This time around, Decarbonization Vision 2050, so we are talking about distant future. It's a lofty, lofty, lofty target for us. But in the previous panel as well, it was mentioned, and also other speakers on this panel also said, communication is important. We have to explicitly express our intention and commitment. So I think our target setting is to show the direction we are moving into. Compared to that, our 2030 target, that is a target. And we have numbers. And this is a commitment. And we have to achieve that. We need a plan for that. We have to concretize means to achieve that. And in spring, we announced that vision, and we have about 250 companies belonging to our group, and there are so many small companies which we don't need to count, but I think more energy using companies number 100 or so. So the emissions amount of each of these companies have to be calculated, and also to what extent, with what means we have to achieve the target. This is being done now. We are working out that. And historically, we have been engaged in environmental issues. And naturally, we need support and empathy from our business partners. We would like to see them come on board with us. However, we have to put our house in order first. So we have to clarify we are going to do this. That is why we want you to come on board. I think that is the logical step to follow. Therefore, American companies or retailers are ahead of us, but someday in the future, we would like to follow suit, and we would like to bring our business partners on board. But at least for now, we have to do on our own.
Thank you, Ishida-san. Well, in the earlier session and also in this particular session, we're setting the target. It will be very convincing. And then internally, well, have you seen any changes, visible changes in your company?
Within the company, internally, well, relatively speaking, Sekisui House, we are not simply selling houses. Rather, we would like to bring about a happy life to our customers. So in order to lead a happy life, what's needed? Healthy, comfort, and safety, and security, and so forth. So for each house we sell, at the high level, we are now already achieving these happy life standards. When I go to other lectures to speak, people say that Sekisui House, when global temperature goes up by 3 and 4 degrees, and what kind of houses are needed? Are you studying that? If temperature goes up by 3 and 4 degrees, that means we have a typhoon and extreme weather. And with Sekisui House, can you have a happy life? No, that cannot be done, because as SDG says, no one has to be left behind. So not the houses on a standalone. We have to engage in social activities to address climate change from broader perspective. That is why we want to reduce carbon emissions. That was my answer to the question. So as was in the previous session, users' CO2 emission is huge, and therefore we have to try to reduce house related emissions, and zero emission houses we are trying to achieve. And last year we achieved 76%. So we need to have a clear awareness within the company to achieve such a target. And also we have to convince our customers as well to achieve such a target. Therefore, this is a company-wide effort. And so that is a change maybe we are seeing. That's why we are able to achieve the target. And also average percentage for the entire Japan is only 8% for renewable energy uptake. Therefore, we have to increase this number as the country.
Thank you. And Kanemichi-san and Kato-san, well, renewable energy 100%. And well, you have already shared with us your experiences. But having this kind of target, what are the direct benefits that you are really now getting? And as Kato-san said, in our company, well, through this activity, well, we are really going to carry out the activity just like as we are engaged in the businesses. And so we are really going to really take advantage of our strength and the strength of ICT to really change the world. And so we do have the sort of the same axis. The concrete benefits were definitely in the U.S. and the procurement conditions and the renewable energy commitment. And then we have really asked to really provide a commitment to use renewable energy, and so the EP. And so there are some kind of points gained from the use of the renewable energy in terms of the procurement, and also the CDP, the ESG rating. And according to our company analysis, I think there are more investments into our company, and so I think that's what we have found. And in addition to that, another message is within our company, it could be very challenging, I have to admit, and all these the major electric power companies are our customers indeed. Therefore, from the sales reps short term, what would be the sort of profit, and that could be some potential sort of the impact on the part of the customers. And from those who has perspective of selling, procurement, purchasing, we have to work on that at the same time. And so there is a conflict there. But the most important thing is not to avoid that. And then we have to continuously discuss that internally and to clarify the purpose and what the business should be. And taking that as the trigger point, we should really deepen the discussion, which is with the good benefits, not simply limited to one single company, but together with local governments and national governments and also the electric power companies. We would have the engagement of these, and to really think more in a broader perspective to come up with a systematic design on a country-wide basis. And I hope that this is some changes I'd like to see going forward.
You asked me the same question, right? First of all, within the company, within the group, looking at the changes that are happening there, 2 degrees centigrade, 1.5 degrees. When they hear such words, you don't really get it, but let's do it 100%, renewable energy 100%, let's do this. Or let's target 0 emissions. These are simple messages. Very clearly, you see the direction. So the direction is clarified. So people no longer have to pose questions. So without any hesitation, they can pursue this. But as Miyake-san mentioned, implementation is hard. 2030, we are doing the backcasting. So by 2030, we are saying 30% renewables and emissions. 30% is the numbers. So we're working in a kind of a bottom-up manner. So far, we had different targets, but now it's 0. So 30% towards 0% or 0. So it's one step. Thorough energy conservation, utilization of renewables, process improvements. We're doing many, many things. Or utilization of EVs. For transportation use, EVs. We do a lot of the activities, and so far we have this. We do this and this and this, and then we can achieve 30% this by 2030. Target is clear. So with this backcasting, we can now see the breakdown. Outside of the company, we are now member of the RE100. We do business globally. With the global companies, other companies, so far we say, please buy our products, please buy our service. In our sales and marketing activities, we had exposure to our customers, but because of what we do in RE100, in our company, in our management, how are we grasping this, tackling the sustainability? I have seen the increased opportunities to discuss these things. Rico, to what extent are you doing this for sustainability? We have done this much. So then we can say, okay, let's work together. Or perhaps we can study together. Those are the things that we hear from other companies. About something very, very profit-making from the customers who buy products and services. As the conditions for purchase, we're now starting to see many demands. Maybe that's partly because we are a global company and we have made commitments. But looking at that, in the supply chain, there is a global company. Rico is a very small vendor from their perspective. For office solutions, workplace solutions, we do business by talking about those things. But to a company like us, the global companies do pretty demanding, stringent checking upon us. So there have been some changes. I think this is cascading. And the global economic operations, global economic activities are now taking place as interactions in decarbonization efforts, in undertakings, or if it's in the commercial activities, buy and sell transactions, it's now becoming relevant.
For 2 minutes and 40 seconds to go, so I have 2 questions, and we are really going to control emission and also control time, 30 seconds each. And one question I have is, already we're having listened to your discussion, and the renewable energy 100% to be achieved, particularly by the leading major companies, it could be very challenging. How do you think that that could be achievable, and it could be various for environment? please be very concrete. And the second question I have, and many companies are really operating in Japan, and renewable energy 100% have not been declared or announced by other companies, and only 12 companies have done so. And so vis-a-vis the majority of these companies who have not really announced that. And also, what is your expectation to JCI, either one of the two, Miyake-san, and just 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's the order.
Yes, to the questions, I think I have to say the same thing for two questions. So I say in combined manner, what is needed, what is necessary? To that question, in my capacity, I would be able to say that I need partners, I need co-workers, I need supporters. So I want to change electricity into renewables, but if there is no one selling renewable energy, we can't buy. Therefore, we need electricity supplier, renewable energy supplier. So the producer of renewables is needed. So in that way, the only Miyake or only Ion is saying that such an energy is needed. And in that case, there is a hesitation. Earlier, you mentioned 1%, and however 1% is large, you said, but only 1%, only for the demand of 1% of the market. There is not many people who want to produce renewables, and that means we need many people who want to buy renewable energy, and then there will be a virtuous circle. So I want to have a like-minded people who will be moving in the same direction as we are. Thank you.
And Kanemichi-san, the time is getting shorter. I perfectly agree with what has been said. And in order to really resolve the major societal issues, one single company cannot do that. And so you really have to have large number of your partners and colleagues in RE100. And then it's not just really being trying to achieve it on your own, but you have to really have the engagement and involvement of many others, and to really come up with their grand vision for Japan. I think that would be very important. And for Fujitsu, using ICT, we would like to really make contributions. And lastly, of course, there are specific circumstances prevailing in the company, but I think we should really present hope to those of the weaker people.
Couldn't agree with you more. We are industrial users, but most of you are actually users of the electricity. There are generators of power, I assume, but such voices should be made from both sides. We really have to tackle this climate change, otherwise there will be no future. When all of us have to come together, we alone can't do anything. So, for the establishment of JCI, we were involved, and we are so delighted we have done so. It's attracting so much audience. It's such a large turnout, not just here in this hall, but throughout Japan, so that people can be vocal about this. That's the kind of society that I want to see. If the JCI could play a central role, so that the JCI could play that role, let's pull together.
Yes. There are two things. I want to answer to both of questions. First, to mass media. I want to be more and more reported. So I went to California summit, and media asked me, what was the result? What is the achievement of the summit? And it was difficult to say. Actually, there are many things you don't understand in Japan. You have to go to the summit to understand and learn more, because things are not reported widely by the media. Therefore, the media has to report what's happening in other parts of the world. JCE, Japan Climate Leader Partnership, and I myself and Kato-san are representatives. And this is not free of charge. You have to pay membership due. And so I think more advanced companies are the members, because they want to become members even by paying membership fee. And we would like to provide more concrete solutions. So please understand we have such organization.
Thank you very much for various topics you covered. And through your business, you want to really make the customers happy. And the 4 companies represented here do share the same inspiration. And also decarbonization is now becoming a new business practice. And adhering to that new business practice will make Japanese companies stronger. And please give a warm round of applause to these company representatives. So we have everyone in the photo, and next, Konishi-san, please.
We'd like to move on to the third session, decarbonization from local communities. So far, increasingly, the number of companies who are tackling global change, the climate change, according to Paris Agreement, and we have been listening to protagonists in their actions. But other protagonists, those are the actual communities, regions. With Japan, tackling climate change is not always a priority. You have been struggling in the local communities, in local governments, especially concerning renewable energy, energy conservation. They depend on the characteristics of community at the forefront of climate action. We definitely would like to listen to what they have to share from the panel. Allow me to introduce the members of the panel. From Shuhei Okuno, Deputy Director General, Climate Change Policy Headquarters, Yokohama City. Great to be here. Next, Teisuke Suzuki, Executive Vice President, Suzuhiro Kamaboko. Director General Environment Department, Nagano Prefecture Government, Mayumi Takada. Chikako Futamura, Director, Member Relations Division, Japanese Consumers Co-Operative Union. Great to be here. In this session, we are really pressured in terms of time, but we'd like to spend some time listening to you. First of all, Mr. Suzuki, my question to you. You are a leader in the economic community in Odawara. You have been engaged in activities for quite a long time. We've seen who you are in various mass media. I'm pretty sure you are a familiar face to many of you who are here. So what kind of activities? I would like you to introduce us to the kind of activities, especially in promoting renewable energy in your community. People say very easy local production and local consumption, but supplying energy and then retail activities. In order to see this function, there are several barriers, but in Odawara, supplier side and retailer side, those are actually borne by the local companies, and that's working out very well. I think that's a great story for the rest of Japan. Please.
I am Suzuki. Thank you for the kind introduction. Earlier on the display, there were 3 titles. So let me introduce myself as well as I talk. Originally, my business is a kamaboko, fish-based producer. You wonder why fish-based producer is here, or kamaboko. 153 years of the history of the company, and throughout these years we are using natural resources, fish, to produce our companies, and also we are able to support our lives through such foods. So we have to consider how we have to protect our earth and reduce emissions and address energy issue. Another title of mine is a network of business leaders and entrepreneurs for sustainable business and energy future. In March 2012, we launched this network, and from Hokkaido to Kyushu, 400 SMEs in these regions are participating in the network in order to exchange views and study together. There are 2 purposes. We have to have a thorough efforts to save energy. Of course, energy saving is important for the protection of the earth and also for cost cutting of businesses. And SMEs are quite lagging behind in this area, so we want to work together. Another purpose of the network is centering around renewable energy. We want to create a mechanism for local production and local consumption of renewables, and we are increasing our supporters in this network for this purpose. And as was introduced earlier, we are working in Odawara near Tokyo, and local companies are making equity investment amounting to 58 million yen. 38 companies to establish a Hotoku energy company. So likewise, the investment was made by local companies to Shonan Power. And so local power is generated here and sold by this company. And also from the investment perspective, we have a gas company, city gas and propane gas companies. They are all local companies. They have more than 100 years of history. They joined our effort, and they are selling in retail market electricity. So we have a renewable energy by local production for local consumption, and this mechanism is established as the Odawara Hakone Energy Consortium. So we are expanding our business step by step. And lastly, another title of mine is I am also the president of Odawara Hakone Chamber of Industry and Commerce. From the local economy perspective, the size of the economy is difficult to be expanded. Having said that, local SMEs are supporting local economy. We take pride in that. Therefore, how are you going to rejuvenate local economy? One of the solutions is that we have to increase funds to be used within local communities, and also speed of inflow of fund has to be increased. What is interesting, Odawara population is about 200,000, and we are buying electricity from outside amounting to 30 billion yen or so, and we are using imported oil. Therefore, we are paying a lot of money to the Middle East countries. If we use 10 or 20% of that money for local purpose, we can revitalize local economy. That is why we are promoting renewable energy by local production for local consumption. Exceeding my allotted time? No, why is it working very well? I don't know whether that is working very well, but there are 4 keys. For one thing, in 2011, that was the trigger. Odawara is about 300 kilometers away from Fukushima, but when nuclear power plant was damaged, and Hakone, next to Odawara, they lost all the visitors, and Ashigara T area had cesium detected. Therefore, compared to Fukushima people, maybe problem is small. However, we had a sense of crisis. And secondly, we would like to establish the relationship where you can see faces. When we establish a Hotoku energy, and there is no prospectus, and there is only one paper submitted to us to make a fundraising. So in this way, we were quite loose, but in this way, we had already a relationship established based on trust in local community. And thirdly, we have to avoid conflict. So as I said earlier, we have local gas companies with us, and city gas company CEO is also a CEO of Shonan Power. So I think that existing energy businesses and new businesses should not be in conflict with each other. That happens oftentimes. So at the end of the day, we have to consider why we are working together for the local community for energy purpose. I think that was shared by all the people. We have some Odawara city officials here, and I wasn't asked to say this, but there is a good collaboration and partnership with the city office thanks to the mayor's leadership in 2011 after the March 11th, 3/11. the city government also started to promote local production for local consumption in renewable energy. So we are promoting partnership. And Odawara City has a city ordinance and the city has a basic plan. So in this way, we have a public-private partnership in motion. Thank you.
I'd like to get back to you later. Next to the Futamura-san from Japanese Consumers Cooperative Union. 2 questions. Cooperative Union, I've been to your place several times, but you've been engaged in activities so early, much before the Paris Agreement. So to begin with, you are actually a group of consumers. As Jacob, you have been very enthusiastic in tackling global warming. What is the significance? What's in mind?
Thank you. The Consumers Cooperative, as has been introduced, located in the local communities, and that is organization set up by the consumers and Japanese Consumers Cooperative Union, but is the union of all these different consumers cooperative. Even from the 1990s, we have been mindful of environment. Even before that, we were engaged in activities. But vis-a-vis the global warming and other climate change countermeasures, I think we have been started to really were working on that in 1990s, and then I often have the discussion with the heads of all these consumer cooperatives. And for the grandchildren's generations, they naturally want to really conserve the nature and environment for them. That is really natural sort of the thinking on the part of the consumers, and also the housewives. And then oftentimes people say that they are nearsighted, but I do have an entirely opposite impression. And as one living citizens, they are really thinking of the sort of the future for their children and the grandchildren, and so they are really having a very mid to long-term perspectives. And so that's how I would categorize all these people. So we're supported by the inspiration we have been carrying on with activities. And come to think of it, let's say that there is a 10-year-old guy, old child, and then 2030s, where there would be 20 years old, and then 40 years old, and so there might be having some children after getting married, and so it's not so distant future, but this is really the continuation of a society and community, and therefore, as the ordinary citizen, the future society and environment, I think that's how they would be perceiving the future society.
So consumers do have a mid to long-term vision. Companies, the government, if you take off those hats, actually all of us are consumers, citizens. Now, cooperatives, you have your members, and not just pursuing energy conservation, you have introduced renewable energy. You are actually doing the PV, photovoltaic power generation. What's the significance of actually doing this?
Well, renewable energy dissemination and also the development of such renewable energy supply. And because of this, the Great East Japan earthquake was really a big turning point for us. And at that point in time, energy-related issues, of course, prior to that, various different people have been discussing what the future of the energy of Japan would be. But nationwide, we came up with the discussion, spending 1 year or so, and then we have really put together a policy and not dependent on the nuclear power generations, and to really work on the energy saving, and also to increase the use of the renewable energy. And also that's something we really would like to strongly really convey to the outside world. And then whatever we can, we should do that. And we have started working on the development of the new renewable energy supply. And FIT, the scheme was launched, and I think that was a very big sort of factor. And even temporarily, renewable energy would become the sort of the major actor in the society. And so there was such a boost, and so there was with this kind of the support by the scheme.
You have to really walk the talk, and each of us, actually, in a way, what we each and every one of us can do is offered by us. Next, I would like to move on to Nagano Prefecture and Yokohama City. Among the local governments in Japan, from early days, you have been doing this in a very advanced manner. Nagano Prefecture had the chance to have been to Nagano for several times. You now have established the law, you were one of the pioneers, and renewable energy conservation. You have been making low-profile efforts, but in a very steady manner. Would you please share those with us? I'm from Nagano Prefecture. This is unlike the previous speeches. This is really about what we do in the administration. You can see the slide, if you could just take a look at it. 2013, Nagano environmental and energy strategy was crafted. While growing the economy, energy consumption and the emissions should actually decrease. We want to create sustainable community, promotion of the energy conservation and the dissemination of renewable energy. Those are the so-called two wheels driven by the community. With this energy, we would like their communities to be independent. This is one of the things that we have been doing. This is really this SDGs perspective, the reduction of GHG, because then we can contain the energy cost, and they should promote the recycling of the money to the local communities. We could also make a contribution to the rejuvenation of the communities. Two things: energy conservation and policy package, and renewable energy policy package. I'd like to introduce the major 4 points. First, energy conservation. First, targeting the households. The second, for the businesses. The third, concerning the energy conservation on the construction materials. And the last one, it concerns all the people, especially the second and the third. This is now have become mandatory by ordinances. First, this is for the businesses, for major businesses. They have to tackle global warming by coming up with a plan. They have to come up with a plan. They have to also report the actual. It has become mandatory on big businesses. Thirdly, concerning the construction material, construction, when there is a refurbishing the building or build a new construction, they have to look at the performance, and also they have to look at the usage of renewable energy. So this is also for the eco-friendly buildings. Next, about the renewable energy package, the top one, it's a community-driven renewable energy. When they make a business, subsidy is given. And the third one, photovoltaic businesses are leasing the roof. It's not just letting them to use the rooftop. The know-how that can be garnered from there as a social business, we would like to see it disseminated to the people in the local government, local community. Next, on the Shinshu area, we would like to see the diffusion of the rooftop solars. People talk about the impact on the environment for photovoltaic PV, but on the rooftop, the impact is less. So we would like to visualize the heat energy efficiency. We are trying to create a solar map. As you can see, energy conservation, renewable energy diffusion, expansion, we would like to see it driven by the local communities so that we can become the community that is fueled with 100% renewables. There are some differences, but if there is a snow accumulated in the rooftop, what do you do? Yes, some of the areas see a lot of snowfall, but generally speaking, We are blessed with many, many sunny days. Even as of now, if you look at the installation rate of the solar installation rooftop, we are number 3. So that's something that we can do. So you've been addressing this from various aspects. Next to Yokohama City. Can you show the Yokohama City slide? The measures against global warming, there was a revision. Zero carbon Yokohama, as it says here. You have that vision. And also 80% reduction by 2050. That's a long-term objective. You have made an announcement. Yokohama is a big city. To be honest with you, this is such an ambitious objective vision. It must have been hard for you to come up with this. What do you think?
Okuno from the city of Yokohama. To be very candid with you, zero carbon Yokohama and carbon neutral. That's what it means here. And it is really an ambitious and challenge. And as shown here, in 2020 and 2030, we do have the concrete reduction targets. But beyond that, it's going to be a really a challenge for us. So what kind of target numbers should we put? And there have been so many different discussions. And as Ms. Miyake said from E.ON, well, the companies and also the citizens, we really have to present clear target. And that is exactly the reason why the city of Yokohama sets 0. And all these businesses operating in the city of Yokohama and the Yokohama citizens are really encouraged to be very serious on tackling of these targets. If I can just give you some case examples in the past, and we had the policy to reduce the waste and garbages, and for the 10 years, they will reduce the waste by 30%. And all the people have really asked whether this is really achievable or not. But all these executives of those days, you really have to do it and then see the outcome. And then unless you have the target set, it will not be really achievable. And as a result of such 43% reduction, and 4 incineration facilities, and 3 of them were really stopped out of the 7, and then only 4 facilities in operation. And so the cost of operating that was reduced, and also CO2 emission was reduced. And so zero carbon Yokohama and the G30, that's the policy name. And so the second sort of they were G30, and then we have the overlapping image of the previous efforts. And then we would like to work together with businesses and the citizens together.
PCC, I have just come back from the 48th meeting. It's not 2 degrees, 1.5 degrees. I think this is becoming a major trend in the international community. That's what I felt. So to achieve this 1.5 degrees target, compared with the 2 degrees, there are not that much difference, but you have to do it faster by 2050 to make it 0 to achieve 1.5 degrees. That's a major yardstick. Yokohama City, what do you think?
Well, so you don't really know until you try it, and that's just a very candid impression. But in order to really achieve that, I think the clear target is necessary. And we have really released this draft in June, and there were so many the feedback and comments were provided to us. And is it really achievable? And then also some people said that you just said it, and then we were very moved, and then we are to really drive this zero carbon initiative. And within the organizations of the city of Yokohama, people do know that it is a very challenging target, but without even recognize that, the vessel is to really leave the port, and then we have to be resolved. And in reality, the test will come. And then if you can just look at the pink box, and then you need a transformation. And we are really going to develop policies. We should not make any mistakes in making choices. A choice is an important word. And probably not in our generation, but in the future generation. And then we have to really carry on creation for the future, not just for our generation, but the following generations. And also the city of Yokohama or the administration alone cannot really achieve much. And so the power and the support from the citizens as well as the businesses will be required. Within Yokohama, people and businesses so passionate about global warming is really there. However, the number is not that many, so we would like to really ignite this passion to carry on innovation in Yokohama.
Thank you so much. So another round of questions. In Odawara, there was a leadership exerted by the mayor and for the difficult investment because Mr. Suzuki's father, he has been so kind, so some people willingly made contribution. So what's the knack for coming up with this one group of the solidarity for other communities where there are no fathers? What can they do if they don't have that kind of close relations?
So I am nervous because you are not going to ask such a question in prep. Well, I am layperson, but when it comes to energy, but I think that apart from people who gathered here, many people do not have interest in energy issues. That is the situation. Rather, they are more interested in professional baseball draft meeting, what Trump said, and they are more interested in that. So when I am trying to expand that network of energy people, but if I talk about energy, people do not understand because basically they are not interested. Maybe it's not the right way to say, but maybe they have many other preoccupations other than energy. They have different interests, different concerns, different anxieties. And what I found earlier, if we want to expand the energy network, then we have to focus on the problems that a specific person is facing. So we have to explain in what way they can solve their problems. When it comes to agriculture, agriculture is also trying to expand solar energy. But if you go to an old farmer in the region, they don't understand. So if you do something like this, maybe your sons or grandson may come back and do farming with you. Maybe that would stimulate interest. And also in Odawara, we are also trying to stimulate shopping streets. And in the past, each stores in the shopping street had a contract with electricity company on an individual basis. But if we lump together all these contracts, we can make the price cheaper, and we can maybe perhaps say 1% of that electricity company's revenue can be returned to shopping street. And also, we have a EV, and maybe we can use that in emergency cases. So this is good for disaster countermeasure. So if we say something like this, we can stimulate interest on the other party. Of course, just think about it. We are not using energy for energy consumption's sake. There is a purpose of using energy. Therefore, we have to focus on that. Another point, may I say? We are an assembly of very small companies. However, the small size is not at all negative in my view. Because we are small, there are many things we can do, actually, because of small size. I learned from many people about SDGs in the past, and I could understand in the beginning. And maybe United Nations are saying something lofty. However, more you learn, more you understand that could provide opportunities to a local economy. So this is a big challenge, but that is also an opportunity. And in the previous panel, we had global companies, but we are small. That's why we can do something different. So we have to believe in the small is beauty. Thank you.
Japan Climate Initiative, we see many members of SMEs in the Paris Agreement era. You are the protagonists with the attractive words. You really need to create a group of the comrades. For Tamura-san, for members, I think you're doing a lot of enlightenment activities on climate action, and also you give them the opportunities to participate in the actions. So let's work together. If there are any hints that you could share with us?
Well, depending on individual, as Suzuki-san said, so the entry point, it might be quite different. But for one thing, from the very beginning, if we are to really look for the right solution, it could be quite challenging. But as they are engaged, they will be more interested, and also they will be having more information provided. I think that's the sort of the power of the human beings, and each individual is so, and also the local community is also like that. And Suzuhiro-san's the initiative. I learned a great deal from your initiatives, and the local community as a whole, or each individual will be involved and engaged, and then we are really seeing what change taking place. And so the involvement, engagement, participation in doing something will lead to the next step, and then the energy will be generated from there, and that kind of the power could be generated more and more continuously. And so each individual's initiative and efforts should be linked together, and to really provide opportunities so that people can be engaged, and also to really provide some the trigger point so that the local communities can start to be involved. And think the JCI would be also such a starting point, and I hope that I will be able to come up with some kind of schemes going forward.
Thank you. So you need to have kind of a capacity to involve people from Nagano Prefecture and Yokohama City. So taking actions from local communities and local governments, exerting leadership. If you could share with us some difficult experiences. As you have already indicated, getting people understand after the 3/11, after the great earthquake, people were interested, but to make it really something that concerns you, each person has a different way of understanding, especially to the people in the prefecture, to seek their understanding. How do you look at it as your own issue or as your community's issues? How best we can communicate that? That was difficult. Say the importance of communication. Komura-san?
Well, the same for the city of Yokohama, and to reduce the waste. And all these garbage collectors and workers, they had really visited more than 10,000 times to really ask people to really cooperate for the waste reduction. And all these working level people really went to the local communities and then really had the communication. That was really important. And that was exactly the initiative to be really taken by the local administration. And also the ICPP, the special report was issued recently that was really mentioned. And then we are seeing the higher risks. And if you could just show my PowerPoint slide once again. And in the latter half of the century, we are to achieve the zero emission. That's what we have advocated, and we made a step further from June. And with this, the special report issued, if it really shows the higher risk, and then we are really going to really set the target, and then the 2050 would be the target year, and 80% plus, and then 80% plus is a number, but we are really going to really aim at zero carbon in 2050, and we really would like to emphasize this zero, and that is exactly the reflection of our passion.
Please give him a great round of applause. 2050, substantially zero, de facto zero. So you are actually pursuing 1.5 degrees city?
And with this 2050 in our vision, we would like to really start running towards this.
The birth of 1.5 degrees city Yokohama. Once again, a round of applause, please. We have 1 minute left. Last round. Be really, really honest with all of the participants. Climate action, especially renewable energy and energy conservation for those people who really want to promote this. Just one word, please. Once again, Suzuki-san.
Yes, I was born and brought up in Odawara, and my company is based in Odawara too. So this is my city, this is my company. However, I think this is what we borrow. It doesn't mean that we borrow this from my landlord. Rather, we are borrowing these assets from the future generations. If we borrow something, we have to return it. We have to pay it back. So with that spirit in mind, I would like to continue to be very active in this area. Thank you very much.
And one session before this, the panelists will emphasize the need of the colleagues and partners. And so we would like to really pursue the same direction. And probably you are in a different positions, but we would like to have more of the partners to really work together. And though they would find themselves in a different positions, but that would be the strength. And also that would be the beneficial thing for us. So we would like to really continuously work together. Thank you.
Next year, the G20 will be held. And in our prefecture, Karuizawa, for sustainable growth, energy transformation, and the global environment related ministerial meeting is scheduled to be held in Karuizawa. Although we are just one local government, using this as a kind of a trigger, from the local community level, local government level, what can we do? About international trends, international insights, it's something we would like to learn, but we would like to tackle this together. Let us work together.
Well, thank you very much indeed today, and including JCI and the Decarbonization Initiative. Well, we were invited, and we are very much grateful for the invitation. Of course, well, this is a very challenging theme to tackle, but we would like to really start this momentum, and we alone cannot do this, and so we would like to really have the collaboration to really take off as quickly as possible, and looking forward to working with you.
Thank you so much. Each and every one of you who are here, in the era of Paris Agreement, you are the protagonists. So climate action, that is exciting. I want to say these are exciting. Participating together and grow together, and then let us create sustainable future. I think we have received so many hints. Please join me in thanking the members of the panel with a great round of applause.